everyone, so welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. I was on vacation. You cannot tell because I never tan, and I wanted to check in, and the best way to do it is to film a mid-year check-in book tag video. I'm not sure if that's the proper name. I'm going to link the originator, the visionary that created this tag, in the description box. And I guess without further ado, let's just dive into those questions. The first question of this tag is best books you've read so far in 2024. And my reading, it's a secret, come closer. My reading was very abysmal this year. I decided to take a little bit of a break and not put as much pressure on myself because I've had a lot of stuff in the first half of the year. I am much more relaxed now. I finally found a new job and I'm soon going to transfer. Plus, I figured some things in my personal life, and now I'm more open to reading in general. So I really only have one option because it's the only book I gave 5 stars in 2024, and this book is You Should Be So Lucky by Cat Sebastian, which is an MM romance that I've read in June with my Fable book club. By the way, I have a book club now. It's free to join. I'm going to link it down below. In July, we're reading The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. I believe it's The Jasmine Throne. I am terrible because I have not started this book yet. It's mid-July, as I have said. I will honor the promise, the social contract. So I will read it. But You Should Be So Lucky was the first book that we read, and it was actually stunning. Cat Sebastian is in her element. She's doing what she does best, and I'm obsessed with her, as I usually am. It's actually a sequel, and I thought it's a separate book because nowhere on Goodreads it says that it's a second book in the series. But this book follows another journalist named Mark, who we were introduced to in the first book. We also knew that he's gay. Mark, who I actually pegged for elderly, I thought he's an elderly man, is actually pretty young, but he has like an aura of an old dusty guy, which was a very interesting thing because it took me some time to get used to the fact that he is under 30. The second character is Eddie, who is a rising baseball star who is pretty unlucky. He got pretty unlucky recently and he cannot perform as he performed back in his small state. He was transferred to New York recently and kind of had a hissy fit about it. So papers are on his ass constantly. Mark, who is somewhat retired from journalism, is assigned to report on Eddie. It's a special project for the paper that basically follows Eddie around. It's kind of like diaries. Mark is very non-receptive to it because he, first of all, is a book reviewer, an art reviewer. He did some profiles on like art people in the past, but sports are not his thing. And he also is grieving his partner, who died fairly recently, like it's been a couple of years, I think. And the death was very unexpected. His partner died from a heart attack and he was very young, under 40. I was very apprehensive when I learned this fact because I literally didn't want to deal with grief in my romance novel, but it was just so good and handled so well. Cat Sebastian knows how to balance things. Mark is very grumpy, very stoic, very jaded, and Eddie is very positive despite his unlucky streak. He's very energetic, he's a go-getter. He's just a really fun character to read about. I personally fell in love with Eddie specifically. I love his character, but I think Eddie and Mark work very well together. They create a very special bond that obviously transitions into a romantic relationship. I loved this. First of all, I cried like a baby. There's going to be a question in this tag about a book that made me cry. This book made me cry like a literal baby. Cat Sebastian's characters almost always do a lot of internal work. That is one of the other elements that I like about her stories. And the work that both of them did was so compelling. Mark obviously struggled with grief and with attachment because of his previous partner, and essentially with this idea that things are finite and you cannot really do anything about it. Experiencing, oh god, I'm crying again. Experiencing the death of a partner that is this young must be extremely traumatic, and I really felt for him. Plus he had all these issues with being public/closeted. He wanted to be more public because Mark, his previous partner, was a big shot lawyer and they just couldn't be at all. So with Eddie being famous, it's an issue, and Eddie himself also struggles with public and private things. It was an incredible novel. Cat Sebastian is at her peak, and I just love, a big fan of her work. The next question is best sequel you've read so far in 2024, and surprisingly it's a whole series. Like, I've read the first and the second book in 2024. It almost never happens because I usually am very bad with sequels, but this book, and I guess this series, is written in a very addicting way, and I just needed to know what's gonna happen. It's The Malice Duology by Heather Walter, and the sequel obviously is Misrule. This was fabulous. I loved it. I flew through it. I am obsessed with it, and I want more. Not of this story specifically, but of this kinds of stories. If you are into fae, but you also want complexity, you don't want cheesy, you want interesting world building, you want believability, you want some maybe political intrigue in the background, more things happening, not just romance, I'd highly recommend this. It's actually a really good fae book with really cool fae lore, but it's also a sapphic romance, and as you know, we vibe with that on this channel, so I was straight up obsessed. This is actually a retelling of The Sleeping Beauty, and the romance actually is between The Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent. This was such a journey. I loved it to bits. I think my favorite part is obviously the complexity of the romance, because it's a hero, it's a heroine villain romance, and it's not mincing words, as in they don't forgive each other things very easily. They are truly on the opposite sides, and it's hard to reconciliate, I guess. And I also really loved the lore and the world building. I think it was very well thought out. It was very fascinating. It's a very interesting book, very cool world building. Actually the best fantasy romance that I've read. So if you're looking for a really good one, I highly recommend. It was really stunning. The next prompt is new release you have not read yet but want to. Wasn't watching a lot of booktubers in 2024. I think I completely distanced myself and actually was quite happy overall. I didn't feel like I need to read all these books to be relevant. I was just reading stuff that genuinely piqued my interest. But there are some books that I do want to get my hands on. One of the books that I really want to invest my time in is Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is the third book in the Black Sun. Is it a 4-book series now? Because I genuinely do not know. I hope it's a 3-book series because it's just a lot, like things have to end at some point. I loved the second book. I think it was a little bit more chill and slower in general because it's a second book. They're usually building toward the finale, so the third book has to be the best book usually. I'm worried about the characters, but I'm deeply fascinated by Rebecca Warrenhorst's world building and her character building. I think she's extremely talented, and I'm yet to read her other series. I think I'm going to finish this one first and then start something else. I think her other series, her urban fantasy series, is like super long, so we have time. The second book also came out in 2024. It's Her Spell That Binds Me by 𝕊𝕙 𝕊𝕙. I wasn't particularly interested in it when I just saw the cover, but then people started talking about it, and I think it was on Reddit actually. The way it was described just sounds so yummy to me. It's about two witches in a witchery school, as in like it's a magical school, and I love magical school settings. I think it's actually a magical university, maybe. I think it's new adult. I might be wrong. I will read it even if it's young adult. I would appreciate it if it was new adult or adult, but if it's not, I guess I will deal with that, because I just love a magical college, magical university type of setting. But I'm real excited about this one. The third one is, you know, you shouldn't be surprised because that's my catnip. Don't Want You Like a Best Friend by Emma R. Alban. You know why? You know why? I love historical romance. I love sapphic romance. Sapphic historical romance is my Achilles heel. This sounds also so freaking good because the plot is somewhat like The Parent Trap, and I love this movie. I recently rewatched it actually, and good. They don't make them like that anymore. The most anticipated release for the second half of the year, as I said, I don't know anything. I'm no longer an expert, but I know that KJ Charles is coming out with the third book in her Gentlemen of Uncertain Fortune series, and I love KJ Charles, and I actually missed a lot of her new releases. This series is about shady characters, and I love that. I love the first book. I thought it was extremely fun. It was sort of like Robin Hood retelling. Well, retelling is a bit word, but it was inspired somewhat by Robin Hood. The third book is about a guy who hooks up with someone, and that person steals something very valuable from him, so he's like hunting him down. And I don't know if the romance is going to be between them two, because I could actually get into that, or he's going to have a buddy, like it's going to be an investigative romance type of thing. I will read either of those scenarios. I think they both sound very appealing, but I definitely need to get back into reading KJ Charles. It's been a while. The next prompt is Biggest Disappointment, and I don't even need to think about it. It's Serpentine Valentine by Joanna Darling. The more I think about this book, the more I macerate, the more I hate it. It's a Medusa retelling. The idea behind this book was interesting. The execution, lackluster, like almost offensive. Who am I kidding? It wasn't almost offensive, it was offensive. So the story is about Lex. Her parents were doomsdayers. She wasn't educated properly, and education for her became extremely important. She was fostered by a nice lady, and she actually got into uni, into a classics department. She's very passionate about classics, and she gets close with her professor, but he rapes her, and she has to navigate being driven out of this university to cover the university's reputation. No one believes her, so she decides to avenge herself. And not all of the things make sense, to be quite honest, because yes, she gets hers when it comes to this professor, but she also wants to punish the headmistress of the university, and she decides to do it through her daughter by seducing her. And it could have been done better, as in the other girl, Luna, definitely is interested in her without her needing to do much seducing, but some things definitely rubbed me the wrong way, and also the lingo with which Jenna Darling decided to describe sapphic sex was questionable. I have a whole reading vlog of this book and I was so excited at the start. It was really like a journey into the pits of hell. So if you're interested in that video and you don't want to read this book and you're not scared of being spoiled, check it out. I'm going to link it. It was a big disappointment, not because I was expecting this book. I didn't know it's coming out. I kind of randomly stumbled upon it. It was a disappointment because of how many negative, harmful stereotypes about lesbians specifically it perpetuated. The next prompt is the biggest surprise, and you will be surprised as well, I think. This book is here. It's Divine Evil by Nora Roberts. I didn't know what to expect from her, but I knew that she's a big name, so she probably is very readable and famous for a reason. And I think the biggest thing about this book is not that I actually enjoyed it. I expected to enjoy her stuff, but because if you've never told me who the author is and then decided to reveal that it's actually Stephen King, I would have believed you. There's something so eerily similar between them. This book is definitely outdated. It includes some sexist stereotypes, some misogyny. Some of it is explained by the point of view of the specific character. We know that they are bad characters, so, you know, it's fine for them to think bad things. But the hero himself also is very misogynistic sometimes, and he is slut-shaming a lot of the women that we meet in this book that are not the protagonist. And the protagonist herself is in many ways not like other girls. This book also has a problem with diet culture. It's been written in the late 80s, early 90s, so I get it. And I was very annoyed personally with the heroine. Her name is Claire. That is one of those effortlessly pretty girls, effortlessly thin girls. She eats like a horse, but she never gains any weight. It's just so blah. But whatever, like I can deal with that. I understand that it's a product of its time. Otherwise, I thought it was pretty gripping. It's not rushing anywhere. It takes its time. It's actually almost 600 pages. And that eerily reminds me of Stephen King. The way it's written also stylistically reminded me of him. So I'm left with a question: why reading Nora Roberts' books is somehow a little shameful, a little, you know, on the guilty pleasure spectrum. But reading Stephen King is based. Am I using based in the right way? I don't know. Regardless, why is reading Stephen King respected, at least? And why reading Nora Roberts isn't? Because I'm telling you, if you did this, I wouldn't be able to tell. The interesting thing about this book is that it's romantic suspense, and you could have easily sold it as just a crime novel with some sexy scenes. Who cares? A lot of crime novels and like horror novels, it veers a little bit into horror, have sexy scenes in them. Stephen King loves a sexy scene. He also loves a disgusting scene and a lot of other scenes, but you know, a lot of very explicit bad things happen in this book as well. It's pretty bloody, pretty violent. It's about a cult in the Midwest. I'm leaving you with this question. The answer is misogyny, we know that. The story is about Claire Kimball. She is a sculptor, and she moved to New York from her small town in the Midwest because she couldn't cope with her father killing himself very suddenly. She's haunted by nightmares of men in hoods raping a young woman in the woods, and with the image of her father being a part of it. For a long while she believed that is just a dream, it's just how her brain is dealing with the grief of losing her father, but it never leaves her, and working with a therapist doesn't really help. So at the start of the novel she decides to move back to her hometown and figure out if that's going to help her. And she meets the sheriff named Cam, who wasn't her friend when she was younger, but who she knew. It's a small town, and they fall into a sexual relationship, but weird things start happening in the town and they have to figure out what's behind it. It is a cult, so you'll know. I found this book so gripping, and I'm very, very curious if you read it, if you've heard about it, because yeah, I'm surprised that I've never heard about it before. The next prompt is favorite new author, and as you know, I have not read a lot, but if we're like being tentative about it, I just read this book and I cannot tell if I'm going to love other books by this author, but I read Pressure Head by 𝕊𝕌ℙ𝑙 and I loved it. It's gotten really dark. Let me add some light. Is it better? I think it's better. I think we're going to live with that. So, it's not the type of book I've ever read, but it's type of fun fiction that I always enjoyed. It's set in UK. It's a story about a guy named Tom who's a plumber. He has a special talent. He can find hidden things that are tied to deep human emotions, as in if the person is really ashamed of it and they've hidden something, he can feel it and he can find this thing. And somehow, because of this talent, he became a consultant for the local police, and they sometimes ask him to be their sniffing dog, but in a human form. At the start of the novel, he's looking for a body in the woods of a young woman that the police suspect was murdered by her boyfriend. And he gets an unpleasant surprise in the form of a guy named Phil, who they went to school with and who low-key bullied him, who apparently is the private investigator who the mother of the victim hired to help the case. It's the we were young and dumb trope. It's the opposites attract. It's giving me like the sassiest, funnest protagonists. I love them. In general, they have amazing chemistry. I just love this book, and the mystery element is pretty chill. It's kind of a cozy procedural mystery. I would watch the show, and I didn't know that I can find it in a book. The next question is actually my favorite new character, and I gotta say Tom is really the type of character that I like. I like a sassy shorty. That's probably because I am a sassy shorty. And we're moving on to the new crush, like the new possible crush that I found in the books that I read. And I'm just going to say that I have none because that's the truth. So we're going to skip this one and move to the book that made you cry. We already know that it's You Should Be So Lucky by Cat Sebastian. That grief element, that grief trope, I feel bad calling it a trope. That grief storyline really fucked me up. So, the book that made me happy though is The Love Conspiracy by J.J. Arias. I did not expect to love this book at all. It was such a surprise for me. I adored it. It was so fun and it made me giggle so much despite the very unusual meet cute for the couple. It's a sapphic romance between two women that date the same guy. As in, one actually is the wife and the other is the girlfriend, but the guy recently proposed to her, and it turns out that they're not the only ones. There are more women involved with him, and he's actually building serious relationships. He's not just cheating. And those two women decide to stake him out and see how many women he is lying to. The wife actually wants to build a case against him in the court. So they spend a lot of time on stakeouts, they get to know each other. It's a very new attraction, type of attraction for them. they have an age gap, so it works against them, but they're working through it. I love this. I love this. The chemistry was everything. I love that there was a bigger plot that was pretty interesting. I love this book. I loved it. It's great. The next prompt is most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. I think I'm gonna skip this one because I was really good with book buying. I was just using my Everend for most part and reading books from my shelves. I bought some, or rather, you know, I rented them from Kindle, but not much else, and definitely not extremely beautiful covers either, so nothing to show here. The last prompt is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I just really want to get back into reading Alexis Hall and Ashley Herring Blake, because I have a lot of these books that I promised I'm going to read till the end of 2023. I just really wanted to get to them, but I never got to them, and I know I'm going to like them. These orders are like my how to buy, how to take, how to whatever, how to read, I guess, orders. I know that I enjoy their stuff and I just need lighthearted shit right now. This is it for the tag. I hope you enjoyed it. In the comments down below, tell me about your favorite book of the year so far, and if that book is the one that made you cry or the one that made you happy. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon with another one, but until then,